Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are actually talking about wireless or Wi-Fi on school buses. And quite frankly, this makes a lot of sense. And so I know what you're thinking. Our kids are already addicted to tech. We're blanketed by 4G and 5G networks. So why on earth would we waste money on putting wireless or Wi-Fi on a school bus? Well, the logic here is actually really sound, and it's coming from Gizmodo by way of the FCC, and I think this is actually really interesting. Now, here's what's going on. A new proposal by the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, would allow the use of government funding to include Wi-Fi onboard school buses across the country, and this is an attempt to bridge the digital divide. Now, obviously, as you know, the COVID-19 pandemic put a ton of things into perspective, one of which was just how important reliable and good technology is in our lives. And according to the Pew Research Center had a survey conducted in April of 2021, so just over a year ago, 90% of Americans labeled the internet as quote-unquote essential or important during the pandemic. We were all working from home. Obviously, things were in lockdown, including schools, and so the internet was very heavily relied upon. Now, in that same survey, 38% of parents with children ages basically kindergarten through 12th grade whose schools were closed due to the pandemic reported that their children had to actually rely on public Wi-Fi to complete their assignments. And if you've been following me, for any amount of time, you know my thoughts on public Wi-Fi and just how insecure they are. Now, as the pandemic begins to hopefully wind down, the digital divide, meaning the gap between certain demographics and access to technology like high-speed internet, is obviously still wide here in the United States. We have a huge disparity. Now, in an effort to close that divide, FCC Chairwoman Jessica Rosen-Worcel proposed a solution to increase access to reliable Wi-Fi for students by putting them on school buses. And to quote Ms. Rosen-Worcel, or Chairwoman Rosen-Worcel, I found that 7 in 10 teachers were assigning homework that required internet access. But FCC data consistently demonstrated that 1 in 3 households do not have broadband at home. Now, she also stated that 17 million students are victim to this digital divide, which is also known in student speak as the homework gap, meaning you don't have good internet or no internet at all. How can you do your homework? How can you advance? Now, the proposal is not only aimed at giving students access to reliable basically internet on the way to and from school, but also for those who participate in extracurricular activities after school. Now, the chairwoman also said, for example, that student athletes who travel to different towns could take advantage of the Wi-Fi on wheels, quote unquote, to complete their homework during the commute instead of waiting until they get home at night. Quote, every student who rides the bus and feels like they don't have enough time in the day to get their homework done while juggling activities will benefit. You can get your homework done on the bus. I remember back in the day trying to do that myself so I could watch TV or play Nintendo because the internet was very minuscule back then. Now, this could even be possible, or rather I should say it could even be possible to park these buses in front of schools to act as wireless hubs, and I'm expanding on that, thinking why not park them, in neighborhoods as well, at least temporarily. From 7 to 9 p.m., you can drive the bus there, you can fire it up, that's homework time, those kinds of things. Now, funding for the Wi-Fi enabled buses would come from the FCC's E-rate program, in which eligible schools and libraries can apply for financial support to increase their broadband connections. Chairwoman Rosen-Worcel also cited bipartisan interest in her idea on Capitol Hill, and so hopefully that proposal will basically continue to move along. And so we know that one of the biggest detriments to education as well as upward mobility is now a lack of access to the internet. Applying for a job these days is pretty much always done online. I can't remember the last time I saw a paper application for anything, not to mention easier access to learning resources, all those other things that young students need as they are growing and developing, to hopefully, go on to college or a trade or whatever they're going to do. Now, in lower income areas, where students may not have things like personal technology, such as a personal cell phone, because quite frankly, their family can't afford it, a school-issued tablet or notebook may be the only technology in their life, and so it becomes beyond important to have the internet because a lot of families, quite frankly, don't have it. Now, I'm not a fan of public Wi-Fi. If this is basically a hardened infrastructure that only students can access with their school-issued equipment, I then think it's a good balance between security and necessity here. And we've known known about this problem for quite some time. There are nonprofits that are trying to give out as many wireless, basically like Verizon MiFi cards or hotspot cards from cellular carriers to students so that they can work from home on the internet. But we have a long way to go. We have a very stratified society when it comes to internet access. And so, if I'm looking at my neighborhood that's blanketed with 4G connections, 5G connections, it's a pretty nice neighborhood, good schools, internet is pretty easy to get for your house pretty much everywhere. That's a huge problem. But I also know, living in the Chicagoland area, I can head out into the rural areas and the internet becomes much harder to get. And obviously we have technologies like cellular technologies that can help with that, as opposed to hardened lines like coax lines or fiber lines, all those kinds of things, not to mention, Starlink and other areas. But those things can be very cost prohibitive, especially in low income areas. And so by virtue of that, having access to this, especially for students, allows you to grow, allows you to continue on. Oftentimes, when you hear generationally in families, the first person to go to college is considered a success story. And obviously, there are a lot of different options that are very good outside of college as well. But my point being is, if you're going to advance above and beyond, let's say, what you're doing into the next level, whatever that next level is, it's going to require the internet, which means it's going to require you to have it on a regular basis. So I think this is a good thing overall. Well, I'm sure there will be a couple of kids, on that bus that are hooking up to the Wi-Fi to go God knows where. I'm sure the school, like most internet connections, will filter it so they can't use it for things that no student should be using it for. But I think this is a good thing overall. It makes sense to me, so here I am, supporting that choice. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.